What's up, everybody? Welcome into DodgerHeads, presented by DodgerBlue.com. My name is Jeff Spiegel, joined today by Daniel Starkand, Ron Gutterman here from the Blue Wire Studios in Las Vegas. Today, we're talking Cy Young and Julio Urías and the case that he has. Now, I'll preface all of this with Sandy Alcantara is the heavy favorite to win the Cy Young. But I do want to talk a little bit about Julio's case and whether he has a chance to be considered. Should he be considered along Alcantara? Should he be only in the discussion for second place? And so, Daniel, I'll start with you. Julio's had an unbelievable season. He wins the ERA title by 0.12 runs over Alcantara. How would you describe the season Julio had? Like, are you? Let me ask it this way: are you surprised by how good Julio has been this year?
I'm never surprised by how good Julio is. Like, I feel like every year he's taking it to the next level. Like, we've known about him since he was 16 years old. He's had those huge expectations since he was 16 years old, and he's pretty much delivered every step of the way. So no, I wasn't surprised. But also at the same time, like a 2.19 ERA or whatever he finished with, the best ERA in the National League. That's not something I predicted going into the season. So I'm a little surprised there. But I mean, great year for him. He stayed healthy the whole year. He made every start, every step of the way. And I also think the Dodgers did a good job of managing his innings, like not necessarily pushing his pitch count up. And that's allowed him to stay fresh. But I also think that kind of hurts him in this Cy Young debate that we're about to have.
Yeah. So, Ron, let me make the case for Julio Urías, and then I'll make the case against Julio Urías, and you tell me which of these two is maybe more compelling for you. The case for Julio is really simple. The pitcher's primary job is to limit runs. Julio has done that better than anybody else in the National League. 2.16 ERA. As I said, 0.12 runs better than Alcantara, 0.32 runs ahead of Max Fried, who we'll talk about in a moment. His expected ERA, which is a number that I really like, that takes into account exit velocity, launch angle, quality of contact, that type of thing. To project an ERA, he's not first, but he's third. He's 2 spots ahead of Alcantara, 1 spot ahead of Max Fried. We could go into the StatCast stuff. That's kind of built into the expected ERA. But the last piece here is compared to Alcantara and Fried, he has a higher strikeout rate. And although I'm going to say as clearly as possible, I don't think this is the most important thing in the world, he does have more wins as well, okay? The case against Julio is actually equally simple, and it's this. Alcantara has basically put up the same numbers, marginally worse than the metrics that I mentioned, and I mean marginally worse, while throwing 53.2 more innings, okay? So to put that in perspective, if Julio averaged 6 innings per start, which he didn't, by the way, he's at like 5.6, but if he averaged 6 innings per start, that would mean Alcantara started the equivalent of 9 more games than Julio Urías. So if we're talking about a massive gap in ERA, like if Julio had him beat by 0.5 or something like that, or if this was just a 20-inning gap, I think I would lean Julio. But I think if you're 97% as good as Julio, but with 8 or 9 more starts under your belt, essentially, I think that's the argument for Alcantara. Which side do you fall on?
Yeah, if Sandy Alcantara played for the Dodgers, I also think he would win 17 to 25 games.
Yeah, I was going to say more than 17 probably.
He'd win a lot of games. Look, Julio Urías had a remarkable season. The ERA title is like the proof you need of that. Yeah. A sub-1 whip. Really just great stuff from him overall. He is the clear second place. Like he was the second best pitcher in the National League this year, and that's a great place to be. I think he was better than Max Fried. He was clear number 2. There's just it's not really a competition. Sandy Alcantara was remarkable this year. All of the superlatives you could use with him. He pitched, 230 innings or something like that, while still maintaining a 2.28 ERA. Yeah, if I'm getting my numbers right, and a sub-1 whip. Like that's incredible stuff. He is the runaway Cy Young. He's the best pitcher in the majors this year, I would say. And that's, no discredit to Julio. He was remarkable. He was the second best pitcher.
And Daniel, we're going to get into Fried here in just a second in that race for second place. Would you be surprised if Julio got first place votes?
Oh, yeah, I'd be shocked. I think Sandy Alcantara's got it locked up. If you look at the betting odds, it's insane in his favor. And I know that doesn't mean everything, but there's definitely some insight there. Like when you see him, the odds being that drastic. I think Sandy's got it locked up. I will say one thing that is in Julio's favor is he got better as the season went along. Like we're talking about a guy who was not at the All-Star game, and then he winds up winning an ERA title. Like that probably doesn't happen very often. He was incredible in the second half. He's been incredible, especially down the stretch here. But I just think going back to the All-Star break, like the gap was this big, and Julio may have gotten to here,
Yeah.
but Sandy's still way up here.
Yeah, and I think the only other piece I could have mentioned in favor of Julio was that he was pitching in games that mattered. Although you could make the argument when you're up 20 games in the division, maybe they don't matter all that much. I don't know. Let's talk about Fried, though, because the next conversation here is Julio clearly the second place guy? So Max Fried, I think, is third. I think there's a handful of guys that you could argue for fourth or fifth. But here's the breakdown for Fried. Fried has 10 1/3 more innings pitched. So to me, Julio's ahead of him. But the argument for Fried boils down to his FIP, fielding independent pitching, similar to expected ERA. Instead of taking into account every batted ball, it only evaluates the three things a pitcher can control, according to them, which is home run, walk, and strikeout. My issue is if a pitcher has control over a home run, then why wouldn't they have control over a high exit velocity ball that goes for a double or something like that? That's why I like expected ERA. But Fried in FIP is much better than Julio, like significant, a run better if you think about it like an ERA. And then pitching wins above replacement, which is essentially FIP times inning pitched. He's much further ahead of him there. As unbiased as I can possibly be, Ron, I think Julio's resume is a lot stronger. He's way ahead of him in ERA. He's ahead of him in expected ERA. He has a better strikeout rate, all these types of things. And so for you, is Julio a clear second place?
Yes, I think Julio is the clear second place. FIP is a great stat. It has its place in baseball.
Totally.
I think when an entire case is built around that stat, the way Fried's is here, he's not significantly better or even better at all in pretty much any other category.
Yeah.
So when your entire case is built around FIP, then that's where you start to get into the kind of the issues that stat has. Like, why is Julio better in almost every single way except for FIP? Well, that probably tells you that that's not a perfect stat.
Yeah.
So I think that's the issue I would have. So I have Julio as a clear second.
Yeah, I mean, and at some point, what actually happens on the field has to matter, right? Like, we could look at exit velocity and hard hit rate, but if Julio prevents runs at a better rate than anybody else, at some point that has to matter. Daniel, for you, Max Fried, a distant third?
I wouldn't say distant, but I have him in third. And kind of what I was just saying, like his second half hurt him. Like if you look at the All-Star break, he was almost neck and neck with Sandy Alcantara. He had the innings, not quite as many as Sandy, but he was right below him. And here we are, in the beginning of October, and he finished with like 187 innings.
Yeah.
So he fell significantly below Alcantara when it comes to innings. He almost, him and Julio, like there's only a 10-inning difference, like you said. So I think if there was a 30-inning difference there or something, then he would have a case. But I agree with pretty much everything you guys said. Julio prevented runs better, pretty much every category except for FIP. He was better. So I think he'd get that second spot. I don't think it's like some huge gap, but I'd have Julio second and Fried third.
All right, so we've got Alcantara first, we've got Urías second, we've got Fried third, and then some combination of Rodon and Nola and a bunch of other guys probably battling it out for fourth and fifth. Let us know what you guys think in the comments below. Are you okay with Julio in second? I know you probably don't like it, but I think the case has been pretty compelling for Alcantara. Again, my name is Jeff Spiegel, joined today by Daniel Starkand and Ron Gutterman. We appreciate you guys joining us here. DodgerHeads, presented by DodgerBlue.com, part of the Blue Wire Podcast Network, recording live from the Blue Wire Studios in the Wynn Hotel on the Las Vegas Strip. We appreciate you joining us. Get ready for playoff baseball. We'll see you soon. Go Dodgers.